workout this morning. All right, here we go. Good morning, everybody. I'll call the meeting to order, but my gavel is over there, so we'll do a pretend call to the meeting, and it's like 11:00 something, 4 maybe. Close enough. All right, I am Marcia Hildebrand. I'm the current president, and this is Colonial Classics. We are recording the meeting, and it will be posted on our YouTube channel later in the week. We're also on Zoom. Is Bob here with us this morning? Bob Herrick set up our Zoom meeting from out of town. And so we're thankful to Bob for doing that and thankful to Gus for coming and filling in and making sure that everything works. So we're going to start our meeting this morning with Larry giving us his opening thoughts. Come on up.
All right. I don't know what you're going to do, but do it anyway. People are often unreasonable, irrational, self-centered. Forgive them anyway. If you are kind, people may accuse you of selfish, ulterior motives. Be kind anyway. You will win some unfaithful friends and some genuine enemies. Succeed anyway. If you are honest and sincere, people may deceive you. Be honest and sincere anyway. What you spend years creating, others could destroy overnight. Create anyway. If you find serenity and happiness, some may be jealous. Be happy anyway. The good you do today will often be forgotten. Do good anyway. Give the best you have, and it will never be enough. Give your best anyway. In the final analysis, it is between you and God. It was never between you and them anyway.
Thanks, Larry. That was awesome. I'd like a copy of that. All right, we're going to have our membership report. Judy Phillips is going to come up and tell us about who's here and who's not. And before she gets here, you can come up, come stand by me. If you're not already a member of Colonial Classics, you're invited to join at any time. Just talk to Lois and she'll let you know what you need to do. We have a $25 a year membership fee, and that helps to pay for some of our lunches, different programs if we need to. And then we also donate as a group to different causes here at the church and in our community. So if you're interested in becoming an official member, talk to Judy. If you want to be on our email list, so you'll get a copy of the newsletter and any other information about Colonial Classics, you can also give your email address to Judy and she'll forward that to me. So, all right.
Well, we have a really good group today. There are 24 members here today and 6 guests. Judy Hummel. Do you want them to stand? Would y'all like to stand? Okay, Judy Hummel. Brenda Jackson is a member of the church and a guest with us today. Brenda. And then Judy Murray. Judy's are very plentiful today, with me involved. And then Mary Beth Green, Rebecca Garcia, and Saul Pacheco. And welcome all of you.
Thank you, Judy. All right, we're going to have, well, no, we're not going to have our treasurer's report from Lois because Lois had to leave early to go to a funeral, but she gave me the balance. And so I'll present the report right now. We have a balance of $1,027.34. And if you have any questions about that or what our expenses are or what we're doing, you can talk to me and I'll let Lois know. So let's have August birthdays, and I'm going to head to the piano. Are there any guests here who have birthdays in August? Okay. All right, Adan.
Well, we have several August birthdays, but I'm only going to mention the two that are present. One is Bonnie Eyre, if she would like to come down. Her birthday's on the 24th, and Judy Phillips is on the 27th. So we can sing our happy birthday to our charming ladies. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday.
All right, what's next? Oh, old business. Today is our last day for the t-shirt donations for any inner city development. And with that old business, oh, no, before I do that, I promised I would ask you how many are going to lunch today, because our lunch committee wants to contact the restaurant and let them know how many are coming. We're having lunch at Sea Island, and you're all welcome to go, but we do want a raise of hands to see how many people might be going to Sea Island. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. It looks like 15. And you can give them that as an estimate. Okay, I had that on my paper and I just skipped right past it. Okay, old business with the t-shirts is going to transition into new business because I went to Inner City to deliver the t-shirts in July, and they are under construction. Kind of, they're remodeling their clothing area. They're still doing all their ministries and all the food and everything, except for the clothing room is kind of closed right now, and they're not accepting donations of clothing until September. So we have two options. This is a new business. Y'all can decide if you want me to take the t-shirts somewhere else this month, or if you want to just wait till September and I can take them there in September. Any opinions one way or the other? Wait till September. Any other discussion about that? Y'all okay with it? Do we need a vote on something like that? No? All right. So in September, I'll deliver the t-shirts to Inner City Development. Sounds good. Okay, so then new business. We are looking at starting a new drive for fall, something else we can donate to. It hasn't been officially decided yet. We could do socks again like we did last winter because that was very popular. And we gave those to Haven for Hope, I believe. Is that correct? So that was one recommendation, was to do socks again for Haven for Hope because they were greatly appreciated. If anybody else from the floor has any suggestions, we can hear them, and then I'll let you know before the September meeting what we decide on. Anybody, any other recommendations for donations for the fall? Do y'all like the sock idea? Okay, should we just go with that? Members, okay, will do. That was easy. I'm going to write it down so I don't forget. Socks to Haven for Hope. And that they take any size for kids, women, men, as long as they're new or in good condition. Okay, the only other thing I have is there's no WOW this week. WOW is kind of taking a hiatus for the summer, but in September we're going to have a kickoff and do something super fun the first Friday of September. So just look for more information about that. We're going to try to kind of come back with a little bit more enthusiasm and encourage women of all ages to come and have fun together. Yeah. Oh, it's an acronym. That's a good question. It stands for Women of Worth. It's just a women's group, kind of like UMW, only we're not part of the UMW charter. Like, we don't have officers and all the bylaws and stuff. It's just a fun group for women. We do service projects, we play games, we do crafts, we do a variety of things, whatever the women kind of choose to do. And we meet the first Friday of each month from 6:30 to 8 p.m. So if you have suggestions for something fresh and new that you'd like to do, contact me. Actually, Lorraine Tetro is the leader. of the group, but I'm going to work with her to kind of get us fired up and go in for the fall. Okay. I think that's all our business, unless somebody has something they'd like to ask or talk about or offer or something. It's your opportunity to shine. No. Well, then let's get to the reason we're all here today, and that's to hear Charles. So I'd like to have Dave. Where is he? Come on up, David. David's going to introduce our speaker, and then Charles will present us with his program.
Good morning. Well, the speaker today needs no introduction because you did such a great introduction in the newsletter. It's very good. Actually, I told some people that I'm going to China tomorrow for a few weeks, including Tibet. So I arranged my schedule so I wouldn't miss this presentation. Now, the longer I attend this church, the more I find out how much talent we have right here. And that's what I found out about this gentleman this morning. He wrote 2 great books, and he said he wrote a couple Korean textbooks for school kids in Korea. But I want to hear more. I read the one about the butlers. It's fantastic. He did a lot of research, a lot of work. So great. I look forward to reading the other one too. Okay, Charles, floor is all yours.
Oh, thank you. Oh, okay, yeah. Um, like you said, there's 2 books. The first one I'm going to talk about is the one that's up on the screen, The Life and Death of Juan Coy. Basically, this happened in 1880. Main story happened in 1886. So this was a deadlier and bloodier shootout than the 1881 shootout at the OK Corral. Described in the newspapers as the Dalyville riot, the sighting of the shooting has been long gone, so lost to history. 5 people were killed that day in September 1886, and it also led to the death of 2 more. No one even knows where Dalyville is. It's somewhere in Karnes County, and basically it's just, I don't know, gone. Some people have talked about having, the metal detectors, to look for all the bullets, but no one's ever done that because they don't want their cattle ranch disturbed. So the Dalyville riot was basically between the Butler family, which is in the second book, and the law enforcement faction, which was led by Sheriff Fate Elder and Deputy Bud Elder. So it started, the book idea started because I would go down to Mungia Printers downtown, and while I was waiting for, business to do with Eddie Ibarra, he'd sit and tell me about stories about his great grandfather, who is Juan Coy. And so he would tell me stories. I'd go home, write them up, and then go and research more things in the library. And this was back before the internet, took over everything, and you could do things from outer space, on the internet. So that was like the mid '90s, and it took about a year to write. So, so the shooting occurred in, like I said, Karnes County, and it's halfway between San Antonio and Corpus Christi. It's home to about 15,000 people, and most everyone here knows one person from Karnes County, Swin Borg. So he knew a bunch of the Butlers and knew some of the stories too. So anyway, okay. So the people that gathered in Dalyville that day were there to vote. They were going to decide whether to allow alcohol or not. Now, the sheriff and his buddies wanted alcohol because it was attract more people and more money. The Butlers didn't want it because they had already lost one son and a brother to alcohol. So, okay. And William G. Butler, the Butler family came there in the 1850s, about the same time that the Elder family did, and both came from Scott County in Mississippi. So the person, okay. Now the Butlers still live down in Karnes County. They still, have ranch down there. They're still politically involved. They're still, still a power in the county. In fact, when I was researching the story on Coy, I called the local historian and asked to, if I could find some more stories about the Butlers and everything. It's like, oh no, I can't talk about that. They still live down here. So, so that was that. Fortunately, later on, Sue Butler, read the Coy book and called me up and asked me to do the Butler book. So that was fine. And so the person that started the shooting at the Dalyville was this man. Okay, so that is Juan Coy. He was a cowboy and a hired gun for Butler. And supposedly he killed at least 33 people in his lifetime. It's not known how many of them were, in his role as outlaw, how many of them were as lawmen. But back in those days, it was kind of a blurry line. So he just liked to fight. I mean, he fought for the North and the South in the Civil War. So, he would just go and have, if there was a fight, he'd get into it. So, um, okay. So William Butler had a thing against the elders because supposedly the elders killed his son, Emmett. And also there was an embarrassing incident involving a daughter during the summer when WG was on a cattle drive. Okay. So once the first shot was fired, there were 70 more shots fired, on the Butler side and 7 on the Elder side. Okay. Now, Bud Elder and W.G. Butler, stood face to face firing at each other. It's said there was probably 10 shots fired against, in that little space there. It's also said that W.G. Butler wore a protective iron thing around, under his shirt, to help out. But despite the closeness and everything, the kill shot on Elder did not come from Butler or did not come from W.G. Butler. It came from in back of him. So Elder did blow off part of Butler's ear, though. So, and then there were also two bystanders who were killed. Okay, besides the 3 lawmen, there was Hiram and Hank Pullen, and they were also from Scott County in Mississippi. Okay. And the Coy's arrest, when Coy got into trouble, he would ride down to Mexico and hide out for a while. Okay, which he did this time too. And the police knew it, and so they went down there, and they needed extradition papers and all this other paperwork. But what they did was that they just got him drunk at the local bar, and then put him in the back of a wagon, and then drove him across the border, and then they dropped him off at a police station and arrested him. So it caused an international incident, but nothing ever happened, at least on this side. Supposedly, the Mexican officials who knew about it, got fired or got arrested. So, anyway. So there were several arrests. Cases went to court. Coy was one of the first cases that went to court. Butler had 7 defense attorneys for him, which was not something that you would see that often in those days. Um, there were several murder charges brought. No one was ever convicted of murder. The only charge that people were convicted on was having a gun within half a mile of an election site. So that was pretty much it. So it was determined that the elders fired first, and that the boys, the butlers, were just retaliating. So that was kind of it. So the butlers and the Coy, went back to their cattle drives. The cattle drive started for Butler in 1863 when he was with the Confederate Army at that time, and they were posted in Arkansas, and the troops were starving, and so his commander had him and 2 others go down to Texas and bring back some beef. So they went back down to Texas and had a small cattle drive of a couple of hundred cows, and went back up to Arkansas and had a nice big barbecue. The only thing was that the Northern Army was close by, smelled the barbecue, and decided to attack. So they captured probably a couple of hundred Confederate soldiers, and they were putting them on the boat and everything. But Butler and the other 2 guys that had gone down for the cattle drive jumped into the water. The only problem was this was January. It's very cold, and but they made it back to their fort in Uvalde. The ones who stayed on the boat, that boat wound up going to Port Chicago, and where they had 20% death rate of the prisoners and the guards because of the different diseases, the cold, and everything else. So Butler avoided death, that time. In fact, 4 of the Butlers were in the Confederate Army, and none of them ever had any kind of problem. So, but anyway, so then Butler decided, this is a good idea, drive cattle, make money. And so he did that again in 1865 after the war was over, driving some cattle down to the one of the Union outposts, in South Texas, and then got into it real big in 1868. Okay. And he would have his brothers on the cattle drives. He was also have Hispanics and blacks, and they all, the cattle drivers got 50 cents a day, which back in those days, that was good money, now the cook and the cattle, the one who was in charge of the cattle drive, they would get $2 a day. So, but then by the 1880s, okay, cattle drives were going modern, trains were now down in Texas, most parts of Texas, and they would just put them on the train and then get them, you could take 2 or 3 days, on a train, and they'll be up in New York, so no more 3 months on the trail with, no food, not good food, no bathing and all that other sort of stuff, nice bed. So, but one thing that didn't change was that Coy was still a fighter. So, he was convicted of a murder in the 1870s, sentenced to about 5 years, but only served about 2. He had 4 sons with his first wife, and his wife divorced him when he was in jail. In fact, she just didn't want any part of him. She even went to court to change her name back, which I guess was unheard of back in those times. And the judge was like, you know, didn't seem that concerned. Then it's like, wait, your husband's Juan Coy? It's like, okay, granted. I know about him. So anyway, so Coy, like I said, was still, um, you know, enjoying his fighting and everything. Butler had asked him to help out Captain Lee Hall of the Texas Rangers because the train system, they were having strikes. Okay. And he wanted Lee Hall, was running security for the Texas Rangers and running security also for the train system. And he wanted Coy to help out. So he did. And Coy had gone, on a trip to Waco, I think it was, and then came back. So let me back up a second. So after Coy was out of prison, he was, not married anymore. He lost a son to a hunting accident, which was very, tragic. And he also got married. So Coy, okay, so this is when Coy's like 50 years old, and this is his new wife who's like 15 years old. So, and they had a child, and, he was becoming more family man, more calm and everything. But, he was helping out with with the strike. And so he was back in San Antonio. He wanted to go back home to Floresville and, get his salary and, so he could go and, give the wife some money and everything. And, but the person who had all the money was not around. So it's like, well, come back tomorrow morning. It's like, I don't want to do that. So he just, did what came naturally and went to a bar. And they, but they were having, uh, there was a couple of people who were helping out with the railroad, but they were the scabs, they were the strike breakers. And the bar did not want the strike breakers in there. And Coy said, either give him a drink or else I'm going to beat you up, so um, they gave him to him reluctantly, but still the bartender came back out, and shot him. So and wound up killing him and on the streets. So that was the end of Coy. So uh, that was in downtown San Antonio in about 1892, I think it was. Yeah, 1892. So that and then the Coy shooting, made national news because I mean he was pretty much I don't know, I guess a legend, as far as, the bad guys at the time. He was friends with John Wesley Hardin, who, if once shot a man because he was snoring. Um, so anyway, so that is pretty much, the Coy story. Um, Now the Butlers, okay, like I said, the Butlers came from Scott County, Mississippi, and settled in, at the time what was Goliad County, uh, and that later split off, and that section now is Karnes County. So, and Coy had worked for Butler for years. So, um, so William Butler uh, was the son of Bernal Butler. Okay, so Bernal Butler was a deaf mute, and him and his wife Sarah had 13 children. 12 of them, one of them left early to find a place in Texas, for them to settle. Okay, so he spent part of his time in Louisiana, kind of working his way through Louisiana and different plantations, getting money and everything, and found a place in Karnes County, for the family. And so a few months, about 3 months later, they came back. They came over to Karnes County. So tragically, though, the son that went, who had left Mississippi early and did all the scouting for the family, uh, also was the first one to die. So at that time, there was a smallpox outbreak, and there were, thousands of people dying. And he was, you know, unfortunately, he'd gone down to the coast to get supplies and died. Caught the disease and died. So anyway, so William Butler became like the top son, and uh, when that was 1852, 1854 time frame, uh, and just they were content with just farming. They were farming cotton. They were they didn't have any cattle at the time. Uh, but once the war broke out and they came back and figured out that, cattle was the way to go, pretty much the entire family got into the cattle business. So, of course, there was also some drama with the Butlers. Okay, so one of the Butler sons, Robert. Unfortunately, I don't have pictures on most of them, but Robert pretty much became an alcoholic. But they also said that he was in love with a woman. But Bernal had him committed to the insane asylum in Austin. So he came back in 1870 he escaped from the asylum and went to confront his father. And there's a couple of stories, it's like he pushed his father down a cliff. They were doing some work on the fence and he accidentally fell, off the cliff. So no one really knows. Um, but the daughter found the father, and a couple more versions of the story. She died of a broken heart. She also fell, or she just had a heart attack from seeing him dead, from shock. So, with the family stories, there's different ones. So, let's see. And then there was also just basic feuds, around town. So that is Bernal. Ah, okay. So Washington Butler, so the person on the right, and John Cooper were friends, but then something happened and they, had a big falling out, and uh, they tragically met at a general store in Helena in 1879. And then they just had a shootout there at the general store. Okay. And both of them were shot, and Butler, kind of laying on the floor, bleeding to death and everything. He asked, is Cooper dead? It's like, yes. It's like, well, then I die happy. Okay. So, and he died. Um, so when Adeline was married to William Butler, they had 8 kids. They had a small place. He was gone most of the year on trail drives. And she kept, telling him that, she needed a bigger house. She needed a bigger house. And so finally, in 1895, he got that house for her. So he had that house built for her. That was $5,000 at the time. It would be easily $1 million now. And so that's what the Butler family lived in, after that. I think they tore that house down in the 60s sometime. So, but it was quite a house. So, So anyway, so Adeline was happy, and Butler kept doing all the cattle driving and everything. So one of the sons was T.G. Butler, and him and his wife and one of his brothers was out for just a Saturday afternoon drive, and they uh, had an altercation with four young men, and they shot him. They shot TG, and beat him up pretty good, left him for dead. So he was in a coma for a while, but he lived, and he went back to working as a uh, constable. Okay, but he also had a dent in his head from the shooting, and they said that the kids will go up there and like stick their fingers in his head, and playing with him, which I guess didn't bother him. So another son that met a tragic end was Newton Butler. So he was married to one of the elder daughters. So the sister of the sheriff, that they had the fight with. And in 1895, I think it was, yeah, there was a triple murder on one of his pieces of property. Never did find out who it was, but there were 3 people killed. Newton kind of had an idea that they were looking for him. So, but he was having his own problems with hemorrhoids. Okay, so his father talked him into, you need to go to New Orleans, go to that doctor and get, your hemorrhoids taken care of. So it's like, all right. So he went to New Orleans, but he kind of knew that he was, that they were, whoever did the triple murder earlier on his property, that they were after him. And so he, he said his goodbyes before he left. So he gets to New Orleans, he does the surgery, and everything's fine. But then the guys who wanted him dead show up. Okay. So what they did was that they locked him in the room and then just pumped him full of alcohol. And so basically he died from alcohol poisoning. He died from the DTs, and so that was another Butler death. Okay. And then, obviously, I mean, they had some daughters. So, but the daughters, were well behaved, and nothing tragic happened with them. They wind up owning more of the land than anybody, I think. So, anyway, so that's the Butlers and the Coys. Thank you very much. Any questions? Yes, ma'am. As far as like who started the shooting, or because I went to the, oh yes. Well, Annette and I went down there to the Butler reunion last year, and that was like the first question. It's like, who really did all the shooting at the Dalyville shootout? You know, and so I mean, I gave my opinion. Supposedly, some people thinks that Sykes Butler, one of his sons, William's sons, did some of the shooting too, and some of it think it was just Coy and his buddy. Uh, I don't know. I mean, it was kind of interesting reading the inquest, but I remember, like, I don't know, 8 years ago or something. So I went down to Karnes County for some kind of event and, book signing thing. And so Sue Butler, was showing me about where I was going. And it was like some festival. I think the Lonesome Dove Festival they have down there every year. And so we're walking to wherever I need to go. And some woman, kind of walks up and it's like, your great grandfather killed my great grandfather. And I'm like, uh, do I need to worry? So it's still kind of debated at times. I don't know. There's probably no kind of 100% sure, you know. Yes, Dave.
I have a question. When you were doing your research and you went down and met these people, did you get any resistance or any pushback or any death threats or anything like don't write about them?
No, no death threats. I mean, like I mentioned, the historian, didn't want to talk to me, because, the family was still there and everything. Um, no, not really. I mean, they were the Butlers were helpful. William Butler, kept a journal at times, and I mean, he even talked about one of the cattle drivers on one of the last cattle drives. Um, they were bringing cattle across the river, and he got swept away and drowned. One of the cattle drivers did, and so they found him and then brought him back home and had him buried and everything. But he wrote years later about how he had bad dreams about it. You know, and so they let me see that. They let me see how much the log book cost as far as like what they were buying cows for and then what they were selling cows for. Um, and Sykes Butler kept a daily diary. I mean, every day. I mean, even if it was just, it rained today. I have a toothache today. You know, um, so I mean, but there were other days that he had more stuff in there. But so that was helpful. Um, so yeah, I mean, no kind of pushback, from the Butlers or anything.
My question is, so are you related to some of these people down in or did you just hear the stories and
Uh,
decide you wanted to write about it?
well, like I said, I mean, it started with my friend Eddie Ibarra. So it was his great grandfather who, um, lived down there and was a cowboy for the Butlers. And so I would go down there to the library and to the courthouse. Uh, and that was another thing. I mean, the courthouse, they just, you kind of go in and take whatever books you want and look at them and everything. So I would go and look at the court cases, that he was involved in. Um, uh, but then, I mean, I'm from Louisiana, so I didn't even when all this started, I had no idea where Karnes County was. So, but I went down there, and you know, Sue Butler was real helpful, and I met some different people and everything. So, but
So the next question is, are you thinking of maybe, I mean, because you ran into different people in different scenarios, uh, is there maybe another book coming out about um, other family members or a different family that,
uh, well, I had after the Butler book came out, um, a one guy down there, Ruckman were the ones that founded, several of the places around Karnes County. And he called up one day asking about something else, and he goes, "Well, my family's been here longer than the Butlers have. Are you going to do a story about, my family?" It's like, how many people did your family kill? You know, it's like none. It's like, oh, all right, never mind. So, uh, but they did want me to do something on Flaccus, which was the black community down there. So I did a bunch of um they had a bunch of information on that. There was a woman when I first started. I started. I also went down there to clean the cemetery. Um, but but that was in 2014. Yeah. So it was like in 2014, there was a woman down there, Juanita White, who was born there and in 1920. And she was the last person who lived in Flackers. Flackers doesn't exist either. I mean, but it's a ghost town because there's still a cemetery there. Uh, and she wanted to be buried there in Flackers. And then I said, okay, well, I'll go and check it out, so I'll go and check out the cemetery. And it was, I mean, they had some tombstones, but they also had like lots of scrubbery. I mean, it was just a big mess. And so, I mean, I started cleaning it and, but I don't know, it was just way beyond my ability and everything. But anyway, and so I would go and talk to her all the time. Uh, I mean, she was just an interesting woman and she lived to 100. So, and she had all sorts of stories. If they didn't have any kind of police down there because everyone just kind of behaved themselves. The town was like 500 people at the most, but then by about one of the droughts of like the early 1900s, a bunch of people left, and then it got down to like by the 1940s there were 5 families left, and they didn't have any kind of jobs down there, so she had gone to Alice, Texas. Yeah, thanks. Alice, Texas. And, her grandfather um, was on would go on the Butler cattle drives. But then, by the late 1940s, everyone had moved out. So, I mean, nothing left except the cemetery. So, I don't know, but I mean, so I did some research on that. I talked to her a lot. I've got the stuff. I have a book written, but I just need, I don't know. There's some kind of pushback there in the county with a couple of people. So, yeah. Well, I mean, there were former slaves there, but I don't think it was that. I think they just wanted, uh, they didn't like some of the stuff that I found, or I don't know. Not that. No, it was more like, I don't know. I did a lot of research on, on the death certificates and stuff. So anyway, so I don't know. We'll see. Yeah. Well, I already told him. I mean, Butler, after he escaped from being captured by the Union, I mean, they just, kind of walked their way back down to Uvalde. So, yeah, Coy fought for the Union and for the South. So, I just made that up part up for the movie. I also, I also wrote a movie script, and so there was some fiction stuff in there. So that part, it's fiction. So anyway, sorry. Yes. Um, just those two have been published here. So that's it. Kind of working on a Korean history book. But yes, ma'am. Um, yes, well, they sold out basically to the Yanta family. So if anyone, so one person who would, I would go and have lunch with Bishop John Yanta. So they lived there, near Flaccus. And then when the people started leaving, the Yonta family would buy up a bunch of the land. So, but Bishop Yonta, remembers, being around and, Flaccus, in like the 1930s and everything. So, but they had, I think, 4 churches over there. So they had 4 churches. They had a school there for a while. Sometimes they would have enough people, at the school to have class, and other times not. So, but yeah, uh, from according to Mrs. White, I mean, it was interesting place to live and everything. So, not much to do, but okay.
And I'm glad you're a church member. So if we have more questions and we see you on Sundays, we can ask you. Thanks again for being here. Our next meeting, September 8th, will be the second Monday because of Labor Day. Labor Day is on the 1st, so we will meet on the 8th. And our speaker is not going to be as much fun as today, but will be very relevant because she's coming to talk about end of life planning. And it's something that's really important and that we put off, but it's kind of a gift to our families to do some pre-planning so they don't have to do it when people are grieving us. Or if it's not us, maybe our loved ones. So anyway, that'll be an important meeting, September 8th. And Lynn wasn't able to be here today, so I'm going to close this with our blessing for our lunch, and then we'll go have lunch together. So will you pray with me? Dear God, we thank you so much for this beautiful day and for these wonderful people that have gathered together. We thank you for the fellowship that we have. We thank you that all the gifts that you provide, and we ask that you'll bless our meals. Thank you for the people that prepared them and help us to go out as servants to share your love with those we meet. Amen. And our meeting is adjourned. So thanks again, Charles.